let's continue on. Thank you very much, everybody, for your engagement with that last item. I think that was a great decision on behalf of this region. So pleased with that outcome. Okay, we are now on item 7.2. This is on page 62 of your sheet. Did you see it on my written sheet? No. All right, this is on page 62 of your agendas, the health and safety report for August 2024. Welcome, Stu.
Morning. I'll take the report as read and take you through a few of the key insights from it. You'll see the safeguard update there. Professor Wiles has been a high-profile case through with a $20,000 award coming out the other side for a lack of care for her safety. So that's just a good example of both the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Employment Relations Act having a requirement for safety at work. We've progressed through the report, moving to point 20, and you'll see there that we had an incident with two staff who were out in a ute, and we're sitting at a stop-go that was a controlled site, and a bit of a shock to them. One of the diggers that was on the site turned around and knocked a tree over onto the top of the vehicle. So yeah, totally unexpected. Dave actually possibly has a picture for us to have a look at that. So you can see there that the vehicle was a write-off. An ambulance was called and the two staff members were taken off to be checked over, and one had a concussion and was off for a couple of weeks, but thankfully has recovered well and is back at work. The team did a fantastic job in the incident in managing the situation and looking after the staff. It was really great to see, and there has been an investigation that's been carried out by the team and Property and Fleet to see what learnings there are for us there. One of the interesting things that came out of it was our smart track. Whenever there's a collision, it alerts us to that. Because this came from the sky, it didn't alert smart track, so that's something that we're looking at. It's a fairly unusual situation. But thankfully the staff are okay. The vehicle can be replaced, and it was notifiable, and the contractor that was managing the site has notified it and is working through the investigation.
Sorry, just can I understand that? That's that tracking that didn't trigger.
Yeah, so it's a collision based tracking, so it's for impact that you would have in an accident, normally vehicle to vehicle or crashing into something, but it doesn't have any sensory active things in the roof.
Right.
So yeah, we didn't. It didn't go off, so it was just an interesting thing.
Oh. But, Did you have a question on that? Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Cookson.
None of their mobile devices went off, because I would have thought in something like that the SOS would have been activated.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I haven't got the full investigation through. That's still happening, but that we'll have a look at that, because I know that some of the iPhone technology now is linked to
I recently had an accident in March or April when both of my mobile phones went off. No, but 2 seconds as you're going through it. No, but as an incident that it marked that it took place.
Can I just make the comment that I believe the vehicle was stationary at the time.
It was.
So it wouldn't be triggered by any sudden stop and movement or whatever.
Yeah.
And it is an unusual one. As Stu said, it was a controlled forestry site. We were only in there because we were told we could go in there, but obviously something's gone wrong on the site. Hence the WorkSafe investigation isn't about us. It's about how the site was being managed.
So why didn't the staff implement the SOS on their phones?
Oh, the SOS is we have an inReach function. Obviously, when this happened, there was lots of people around. The contractor was there, the staff were there, ambulance was called immediately. So they weren't, isolated or alone when it happened. So I think all the precautions that were reasonable were taken at the time.
Just asking.
carry on with your report.
Okay, thank you. As we move through, you'll see there in 21-22, the tier 1 and 2 leadership walkarounds. I think at the previous meeting, there was some discussion around that, and there was interest just to see how that's going. So we have tracked that, and you'll see that we've completed 14 of those across the past 12 months, and some of the key insights are shared there. So that's been going really well, and it's been good to have that engagement with staff and the actions that come from that. On the next page, you'll see that we have reasonably high absences. We've had COVID, influenza, and there's been a couple of bouts of that and some Castro bugs out there. So that's spiked our numbers a bit, reasonably high. And I guess we had a discussion about it at ELT, and Tracy made a good point that COVID was previously separated out, and that's now included in the numbers. So you see that higher than would have been previous. And the only other thing, just to make note, under the employee assistance, I know that we talk about that quite often, and it's a constant focus for us. And we obviously have our EAP service, and I think it was mentioned last 2 months ago about the Rongowa Māori offering in that space, and we've got good yarns in the wellbeing team, and we've also got our My Everyday Wellbeing going on there. We have engaged with Tim from My Everyday Wellbeing, and while we send out emails to staff on that, and there's lots of things that they can do and pick up from those emails, some of our on-the-ground physical work staff don't have access to that so readily, and they've developed toolbox sessions for that we're going to trial in Northgate and Powra to give those guys access to that. So that was just something additional that we're doing in that space. So that's the highlights of the report. Happy to take any other questions.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Stu, for the additional info on the ELT walkarounds. I used to do them myself in a previous life. I was wondering, you've got 14 in the past year, and that's tier 1 and tier 2. Do you have a method kind of for tracking a bit whether each person actually gets to do one in a year, or that they are spread? Because I see a lot of them are in ICM, and I realise there's more risk there, but you know, there's a real risk that some tier 1, tier 2 leadership team members wouldn't actually have much exposure to this, looking at those numbers, or that there might be some departments that just get missed out entirely.
Yeah, no, we do. We have good engagement that's discussed at ELT, and the executive are engaged in it and are active in it. We have identified the critical risks throughout the organisation, and that's aligned with what those walkarounds will be. And obviously, in my role, and Chris often gets out there too to look more often, I guess, which is good. So
Okay,
I
so
think
you've got no concern it's falling
No.
too much on some people or on some departments?
no, I think
Okay,
that it's pretty evenly spread.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Just a question regarding that EAP services and that council's utilization falls in the upper recommended percentage. Any commentary on that?
Yeah. I guess that's was it 7 to 14% is the range that they recommend. I guess it's good to see that we're within the range, and that when you see the spread there, the 70% of those services are being accessed for personal use and 30% for work related. We're told that that's fairly normal and good to see. So there's no concern there, and it's pleasing that we're still taking it up, and that the number of sessions per engagement are in line with what they would expect as well. So that's good.
Okay. So we're not concerned that we're at 12.7 and the upper recommended is 15. I guess I'm trying to understand if
Yeah.
one was above 15, what does that indicate for an organization?
Yeah, so we're not concerned, no. And I guess if we got beyond that recommended, we would start to look, and I guess then you would start to look, has the change in the personal versus work, or, you know, what's going on in the business, those kind of things. So.
Any other questions from councillors? If not, thank you. I've got a mover and Councillor Marr, a second and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Hey, thank you very much for that. We always like good pictures, or like not good pictures as they may be,
Yeah.
but always useful in ensuring that councillors have a picture of what has happened.
Yep.
So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. All right, councillors, we now move on to item 7.3. This is on page 70 of your agenda. This is in regards to the HUIA SUPERGOLD concession changes. This is coming to us as a result of a recommendation out of the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee. So I'll turn over to you criminy, Phil. Sorry, Phil. It's just a moment. Not enough caffeine yet this morning. Over to you, Phil, and Angela. I'll just come to you after he's done. If there's anything you want to add. Kia ora.
Morena koutou. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to the report. I'm going to pass straight to James Llewellyn, who's the report author, who's online, if that's okay, and then we'll happy to answer any questions.
Great.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thanks very much for the opportunity to just briefly introduce this paper, which I will take as read. As was mentioned in the introduction, this paper was previously presented to the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee, and in particular there were a number of recommendations from an independent review that was undertaken as a result of the 2-year HUIA review that was ultimately approved by the NZTA board. So the independent review came up with 2 particular recommendations to address one of the key challenges that we have with HUIA, which is to increase the level of fare box recovery, that is the revenue from passengers as a proportion of operating costs, which is a key requirement of government policy as expressed through the government policy statements on land transport. So the first recommendation was to remove the current arrangement for free fares for SUPERGOLD cardholders on the 2 peak time services that HUIA operates, one from Hamilton Franklin to Auckland and another in the opposite direction. The second recommendation was to investigate the introduction of a 50% concessionary fare for children aged 5 to 15 years of age. And the reason for this was to try and encourage group family travel in particular, which is a particular popular activity at weekends on the weekend service. So rather than every member of, let's say, a 2 adult and 2 children household paying the full fare, up to 15 years, the children would pay half fare, and that would also then encourage the adults to pay the full fare as well, and everyone to travel together. So although the recommendation was to investigate, the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee were keen to actually introduce that particular proposal. So hence the report to this council is making that recommendation today. In terms of introduction, that's really all I would like to say. There's a lot of analysis in the report, which I'm happy to talk about, but I will now hand it over to questions and comments. Thank you.
All right. Angela, as the deputy chair of that committee, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Pamela. Thank you, Phil, and thank you, James, for the report, and James, your presentation today as well. Basically, at our committee, our last committee meeting, the feel of the committee was that this would be a move which would bring us more in line with what the GPS was directing towards fare box recovery. It would also bring us more in line nationwide with the SUPERGOLD policy that other regions follow. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. Cool, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, James, just looking at your table 4, the difference between the base and then column 3, which the only difference is the children are now half fare. You indicate a sort of an extra 7,000 children would ride the train. What's the thinking behind that increase?
So through the chair, we have made an assumption that a 50% concessionary fare would generate an additional 10% of child travel that otherwise wouldn't happen if they had to pay the full fare. The challenge we have is that we don't have sufficient historic data to be able to come up with forecasts which provide any more degree of granularity, but that is what we believe is a reasonable assumption.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Kneebone.
So I'm happy to move the recommendations.
I think the onus is on us to increase fare box recovery with the direction we've been given. I think this is a good balance of getting a contribution from over 65s in line with what's happening nationally, and also increasing that incentive for travelling as families. I personally used to HUIA from Huntley, and so to pay the 50% fare for children makes sense to me, just in context of what it would cost and what you'd expect as a service. And I look forward to seeing how this changes again over time, obviously, but it's a considered response by the committee.
I am pleased that that we're going to be able to continue, if this is enacted, that we're going to be looking at the impacts that this has, because not having the historic data is a bit of a hamstring. So really looking forward to what might come out of this in terms of data that supports our decision making going forward onto HUIA. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being picked on, but I'm happy to second the motion.
Nice. All right. Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Good stuff. Hey, thank you, James. Appreciate your report and your presentation today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, councillors, we are now on to our last item. This is item 7.4. This is on page 80 of your agenda, and it is in regard to the reallocation of excess remuneration.
I'd like to
Dave.
recommend option 3, move that. I think it's a logical way. Yep.
So option 3, just for those who are online and only looking at the agenda before them, there was an additional option that was circulated via email after the publishing of this agenda. So I'm just wondering if we go to you, Dave, to talk through that.
Certainly. I've popped on the screen what we are recognising as option 3 in terms of a determination proposal. The underlying gist of this is that all of the remunerable positions remain unchanged, and with the surplus pool that is remaining from the changes to the Environmental Performance Committee Chair and Deputy, we are creating a new position for Deputy Chairs of Council committees with more than one committee. So when one person holds multiple Deputy Chair roles, and we are simply using the excess pool to create that position. But other than that new position being created, all other remuneration payments remain unchanged in this option.
And I understand correctly, you've had communication from Councillor Smith that he is supportive of this way forward as well.
That's correct. Councillor Smith managed to find some internet access in a rainforest in North Queensland and did contact me to confirm that he was happy with option 3 as a proposal.
Very good. All right. I do note in the chat that Councillor Graff has seconded the motion. So we've got a mover and a seconder for that option 3. Councillor Nicol,
No,
any
that was all I was
further
going to do, is second it, and
comment?
just appreciate Councillor Strange's work as a deputy of those committees, done a fair bit of work getting around, especially when it comes to being a spokesperson for HUIA and such things. So
Yeah,
happy, and also nice not to see those ratios. They confuse the hell out of me sometimes.
yeah,
This
yes.
works well. Thank you.
Yes, well, and certainly support what you were saying, Councillor Nicol. I think in particular being the deputy chair of the Future Proof Public Transport Committee, seeing as that has an independent chair, Councillor Strange has had to be the one who fronts the commentary, the media responses that often come as a result of the agenda items before that particular committee. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually support option 1. I think it just evenly spreads across everybody as they sit at the moment and as we discussed at the beginning of the triennium. But as this benefits Councillor Strange, I'd just like to hear a justification on workload, etc., and why she believes that extra remuneration should come solely to her. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, taking, without making it personal, if you look at the position above, deputy chair of one committee on a considerable number more than what is proposed in option 3, and workload for that one committee compared to workload for 3 deputy chair positions. We could go into detail on that if you like. However, justifying my workload to make it personal.
Well, it's personal, isn't it? But the only beneficiary of this, how can it?
Yeah,
be
let's
personal?
just, as much detail as you would like to go into or not, we do have a mover and a seconder for this.
Absolutely. Councillor Downard and myself work incredibly hard on RTC. Through the RTC process, each triennium, we have hearings. Hearings for the long-term plan of the region's transport is something that I was heavily involved in as the deputy chair. Councillor Downard is very inclusive, including me in any agenda setting meetings. As for the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee, many a time that committee is
I think that Councillor Strange, as I have already indicated, as the deputy chair of that with an independent chair, it does fall on you as the elected official, the senior elected official, to front the decisions of that committee and to respond to any queries that come. So I think that I've already covered the additional responsibilities that come with that particular deputy chair role. All right, we have a mover and a seconder for option 3. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. All right, thank you very much, councillors. That takes us through the agenda. I appreciate everybody's attendance. I appreciate your support in paying due heed to the significant decisions before us and making sure that we spend our time and energy on those items that are of greatest significance in terms of moving our region forward as a whole. So thank you very much for that. All right, Mr. Chief Executive, we'll conclude with a KARAKIA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ona hea mai te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana te hinanaru, i te ara takatu, kua rā e rongo, e whakaria aki ki runga, kia tina, HUIA, tai kia.
Thank you very much, councillors. We'll declare the meeting closed at 11:36 a.m. Cheers for that.